My name is Sarah Graham. This is my co-host, Stephen Janice, and welcome to this breaking news edition of the Police Accountability Report. We are here to present you with some shocking video of an arrest in Shawnee, Oklahoma. It depicts an encounter between a Shawnee, Oklahoma police officer and a grandmother walking down a public road with her grandson and a dog. But what happens when the officer approaches her and what he says when he's caught on the cell phone camera is what we'll be unpacking for you today. It's an arrest that shows, not tells us, that police power is both easy to abuse and destructive when misapplied. And it also raises questions about if the police who enforce the law truly understand it themselves. The story starts in October of 2023 when Janine R. was out walking with her grandson and her dog. They're simply walking down the street enjoying their day when a police officer suddenly gets out of his car. Just watch. Am I under arrest?
You are being stopped for walking down the wrong side of the road. And there's a sidewalk away, just like I explained.
But we just got here.
What?
We just got here to the sidewalk.
I'm going to tell you one more time.
Sir, I know my rights, sir.
So, Stephen, you can see from the very beginning, the officer raises the specter of an arrest. Can you tell me what we're seeing here?
Well, it's really hard to understand what we're seeing here because she clearly is just walking along the street. She's not doing anything. She's no public threat. She hasn't committed violence, anything. It's very, very difficult to understand why the police officer starts out so aggressive.
So the cop continues to threaten Janine, and understandably, she pushes back. Just watch.
Sir, I know my rights, sir.
Sure.
I would like your supervisor, please.
Sure, you can. After you give me
No, sir.
Okay, come here. Come here. Put your phone there.
Go get Papa.
There you go.
So, Stephen, I heard that the police officer said that she was committing a crime by not using a sidewalk in Oklahoma. What do you know about this law?
Well, that law is really just meant to prevent people from blocking traffic. Really a very simple kind of jaywalking law, not something that's supposed to be enforced in neighborhoods where clearly there's no traffic, clearly there's no way to obstruct traffic. So it seems kind of a misapplication of that law.
So next, the officer said something that I find really troubling. He threatened her with more than arrest. He threatened her with violence. Just listen.
Hey,
Stop it. None of that. Look, if you
Sir?
do anything like that, I'm going to put you on
Sir?
your ass. You understand me?
sir, I've already had this with the shiny tops, and
Okay.
all right.
Stephen, this is sort of shocking to me. I mean, at least from the video, it seems like she's minding her own business. Why is he being so aggressive?
Well, at this point in the video, there seems to be no justification for the officer, ratcheting up this encounter or escalating this encounter. She hasn't really done anything except question the officer's right to arrest her or question the officer for his probable cause and why he wants to arrest her. So really, at this point, all of it's kind of inexplicable.
So, Stephen, first he mentions her not showing her ID, and then he mentions obstruction. Can you talk a little bit about that? Do you think this is obstruction in terms of a roadway or another form of obstruction?
Well, it's weird because at first it seems like it might be because of the roadway, but then when he talks about her not giving ID, oftentimes police will say if you don't give ID when they're investigating a crime, it's obstruction. So to me, it's very confusing, and I think that's a really bad thing when you're having an encounter with police you're worried about, to be confused about what type of law you're applying, and it's very unclear, and I think maybe in some sense he's confused.
So, Stephen, to me, it seems pretty clear that you're not supposed to be able to be arrested for not providing ID if you're a pedestrian. Now, is Oklahoma a stop and ID state?
No, it is not. And like most states, it shouldn't be. I mean, if you're walking on a public road, you should not have to ID yourself. That's unconstitutional. Obviously, if you're in a motor vehicle, that's different. But in this case, there's no underlying crime. I don't think there's anything to justify saying you have to give your ID. She's in a public place. The Constitution protects that. So absolutely not.
So now, even though the officer has completely changed his justification, he moves to take her phone away, to take away her right to record.
Sir, I know my rights, sir. I would like your supervisor, please.
Sure, you can. Actually, give me.
No, sir.
Okay, come here. Come here. Put your phone there.
Go get Papa.
There you go. What you need now?
Hey,
Stop it. Okay, none of that. Look, if you
Sir?
do anything like that, I'm going to put you on
Sir?
your ass. You understand me?
sir, I've already had this with the shiny tops, and
Okay.
all right.
You're going to get obstruction
We're walking down the road.
for not identifying yourself.
For what, though? I wasn't doing nothing wrong.
I told you what you was doing. Come here. Get in here.
He's arresting me for walking.
No, you're being arrested because. There you go. Do what?
I mean, Stephen, when you're watching this, when you're seeing this grandmother be threatened with obstruction, with failure to ID, for not walking on a sidewalk, and then you see him interfere with her First Amendment right to record, I mean, what is going through your mind when you're seeing this?
Well, as we're watching it right now, I think what I'm seeing is an abuse of police power that should scare us all. This is something we talked about continuing on the show, that police power, when abused, is an incredibly intense and incredibly dramatic power that can really ruin someone's life. And I see here a person who was walking along peacefully, not doing anything. Why is this police officer interfering in her life like this? It's kind of shocking.
So, Stephen, I was just struck by how quickly all of this unfolds. I mean, what did you think when you seen this kind of aggressive policing? I mean, it's honestly shocking.
It's something we call in police reporting called rapid escalation, where police seem to, for some reason, inexplicably either feel that their power is challenged or hegemony is challenged, and they have to rapidly escalate a situation that really doesn't warrant it. So, yeah, it seems to me a classic case of rapid escalation.
I mean, I just find this so problematic because, as we said, this is a grandmother walking with her grandson and her dog. It seems that this sort of aggressive policing was beyond unnecessary. So we did reach out to Janine. Not only was she arrested, not only was she taken to jail and forced to pay bond, but now she has to hire a lawyer, which, as you know, can cost thousands of dollars to represent her in court. And understandably, she is fearful of retaliation. So now I'm going to give you what we call the anatomy of a bad arrest, to show you how every arrest is consequential and how it can wreak havoc in the lives of innocent people. So first, as you can see, we have a grandmother walking her dog with her grandson. Is she committing a crime, an act of violence? Is there any evidence that she is a danger to the community? Well, I think not. And now the officer approaches and is immediately confrontational. At first, accuses her of not using the sidewalk, and then not IDing herself, and then of obstruction. He also threatens to take her to the ground.
Am I under arrest?
You are being stopped for walking down the wrong side of the road. And there's a sidewalk available, just like I explained.
But we just got here.
What?
We just got here to the sidewalk.
I'm going to tell you one more time.
Sir,
Would you like
I
to
know
give
my
me-
rights, sir. I would like your supervisor, please.
Sure, you can. After you give me
No, sir.
Okay, come here. Come here. Put your phone there.
And finally, he arrests her again for obstructing, although he uses the word obstruction, which could mean her refusal to ID. Either way, the consequences for Janine are devastating. Not just money and trauma, but her mental health. And as she told me, she's actually afraid to go outside. She mentioned to me that her grandson has been traumatized and will barely leave her side. And she also is afraid to file a complaint against the police department. She is, put simply, afraid to do anything. And for me, this type of arrest typifies an issue that we've discussed frequently on this show, and that is bad policing is a means to diminishing the political efficacy, the sense of agency, and even the psychology of a person's right to move about freely. Bad arrests like this don't just diminish our rights, they diminish us as people. And I think to a certain extent that is purposeful. I mean, how else can you explain what we're watching on the screen right now, and how else can anyone justify such a questionable use of power? Now, Stephen, you've reached out to Shawnee Police. How have they justified this arrest?
Well, I called the number that they have for public information, and they didn't call me back. And well, at first they didn't call me back, and they didn't. There was no answering machine. But then I just got a call. We're recording this, so I'm gonna call them back when we're done, and then we will update in a short, or we'll update during the live stream and let people know, what's going on. So they didn't call me back.
Okay, hopefully we're going to have an update. We're going to do our best to follow up on this case, and Stephen's going to call the police department back. And of course, if we have any information for you, we're going to update you in the live chat. My name is Ted Graham. This is Stephen Janis. We are the Police Accountability Report, and if you have evidence of police...
Jenin, a Palestinian city in the northern west bank of occupied Palestine. It's home to 23,000 refugees, all living in the ghetto-like area of less than 1 square kilometre. In July this year, the camp was the scene of the largest military operation conducted by the Israel Defense Forces in the West Bank since the Second Intifada 2 decades earlier. In 2002, Jenin was at the centre of the bloody battles of the uprising, which saw 52 Palestinians killed, and the city remains a hotbed of resistance. Those children who lived and survived the violence of that period grew up knowing only a life of occupation. They saw their friends and families killed and have now taken up the mantle of resistance. The Real News Network spoke to Hamir Salama, whose son Farouk was killed by the Israeli army just days before he was due to be married.
فاروق ابني أول ما أثر فيه وخلاه يجاهد اعتقال أخوه فادي وحشيتهم فوتوا علينا آذوه ضربوه هنوني أنا دمروا الدار بقى عمره 7 سنين حط كده كره إلا اليهود معاملتهم السيئة للبشر فلما صار الانتفاضة هاي آخر اللي احنا فيها هسه الكتيبة استشهد صاحبه عز صاحب له وفي رد استشهد صاحبه الثاني وبقي كله يابا داود زبيدي والحصري فجأة اختلف نهائي، رجع يعني بقي طالع من السجن ملوش 20-30 يوم. يقول عنهم إرهابيين. مين اللي زرع الإرهاب؟ مش هم اللي زرعوه. هذا فاروق ابني شاف الاجتياح وشاف الظلم وشاف الخوف. والله طول ما في احتلال وفي يهود ما في مستقبل لبشر، ما في مستقبل لبشر الا اذا هم دشرونا بحالنا وخلونا شعب نعيش. احنا من حقنا نعيش، يعني من حقنا. اخذوا نص اراضينا ورضينا وقلنا يلا دولتين، بس هم مش راضيين على فكره، مش راضيين. في عند الناس متطرفه بدهاش دولتين.
Hania, like many of Jenin's residents, is a refugee of the 1948 Zionist expulsion of people from across Palestine. Today, these depopulated villages either remain empty or have been razed to the ground to make way for Israel's settlements. Palestinians are banned from returning to these homes.
اللي هجرنا من بلادنا اليهود فاتوا على القرى ذبحوا الاطفال، اللي شوفوه شكوا انه مقاومه بقوا
My name is Taya Graham, and welcome to the Police Accountability Report. As I always make clear, this show has a single purpose: holding the politically powerful institution of policing accountable. And to do so, we don't just focus on the bad behavior of individual cops. Instead, we examine the system that makes bad policing possible. And today, we will achieve that goal by showing you this video. It depicts an unwarranted and aggressive raid on a house over a noise complaint, but it is how police escalated the encounter and what they did when the occupants pushed back that we will be unpacking for you today. A clear example of how police power can be abused and the consequences.
I'm trying to find an interview with James Friedman. I don't know where it is. I don't have my glasses on.
I'm your host, Manson Moose. Comrade George Jackson stated in one of his writings that the criminal justice system itself is the enemy of any type of resistance to fascism. Throughout this country's history, we see the use of the criminal justice system to suppress any type of resistance to fascism. J. Edgar Hoover stated that the goal of the counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO, was to prevent the rise of a black messiah who would be capable of organizing black people into fighting fascism. Given our history, it's no surprise that in 2023, we're talking about an attempt to build a military-style complex for training police in Atlanta, also known as Cop City. Cop City itself will be a monument to our criminal justice system. And the fastest response to people protesting Cop City shows what this project is all about. As we speak, the state of Georgia is pursuing RICO charges for over 60 Cop City protesters. Before the crackdown on Cop City protesters, the LA Police Department Criminal Conspiracy Section used agent provocateurs to set up and kill members of the Black Panther Party. The most noted agent provocateur was Lawz Series. Criminalizing civil disobedience was the goal of the LA Criminal Conspiracy Section, and that's just one of the countless examples of state fascist crackdown on dissent. The Chicago 7, the Panther 21, anti-war protesters in the 60s, civil rights protesters, and now the Stop Cop City movement. Joining me to talk about Cop City are my colleagues Stephen Janice and Ted Grant. Welcome to Rallying the Bars.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad to have y'all back. And before we go into like unpacking Cop City, let's just give context to where we believe that this response is coming from. You know, we had Rodney King,
Yes.
we had Freddie Gray, we had George Floyd. We had multiple examples of people being killed by the police. And as a result of that, we had outcry, national outcry, worldwide outcry against police brutality and attacks being used. And the cry that came on a lot of level was police reform. I've got issues with reforming the police, but that's what they came up with. Like, we need to do something with divesting the police. And as a result of that, we see now the fastest response is to say, okay, we hear you, so we're going to do something, and we're going to meet y'all with demands by creating a training mechanism for the police. And the training mechanism we're going to create this state-of-the-art facility. We're going to create this training facility that's going to be so magnificent that when the police come out, they're going to be like RoboCop. They're going to be programmed to like see the kitten in the tree, take it down. Right. They were programmed to see a little kid go across the street with the bicycle, stop the car. They will be programmed they were so sanitized that when people call for the police, they won't expect the police to come and do what they're delegated to do. That's a myth.
Yeah.
All right, let me say this here. Both of y'all went down there and visited Cop City. So educate our audience on, starting with you, James, educate our audience on what is Cop City.
Well, before I talk about Cop City, I just want to say that we have this idea at the Police Accountability Report that the idea that you can reform police so that police are no longer corrupt is an ill thought out idea.
Yeah, right.
You know, the idea that there's this beautiful utopian police department that will do nothing but, constitutionally enforce the law is looking at the problem in the wrong way, because the police department only reflects the underlying values of community. And in this sense, and in a sense we see in Baltimore and many of these cities, it reflects the massive wealth inequality and injustice that construct these communities. So the idea to say there's some magic solution,
right.
And when you look to Baltimore, and I think Tay has talked about this extensively, our consent decree, which we had in 2016 with the federal government, has led to tens of millions of dollars spent on the police department, but nothing into the community. So why do you think that's going to help anything? So that should be the first thing we say before we approach this idea of Cop City.
Right.
Now, in March, Tay and I traveled to Cop City, and we really were on the ground and looking at it. And I think, Cop City, as you said, is an expression of this idea, and it's sort of an extension of a lot of concepts that we'll get into as we go on. But the main thing about it was that it was very interesting to see the synergy between corporate wealth, which is the Atlanta Police Foundation, and the political might of the police. The two coincided in this lopsided neoliberal, I guess you would call, alliance that wanted to further push the myth that you're talking about, that somehow investing more money in police will make a community better. And the biggest part of that is when you look at Cop City taking this beautiful, sort of very, I think, limited amount of force, and tearing it down is, I think, emblematic of how corrupt that idea is, essentially.
And let me describe for you a little bit, since we did go there in person, what the Wilani Forest is like. So there's over 300 acres of this forest, and it's considered one of the 4 lungs of Atlanta. That is how important this forest is. So its preservation is absolutely necessary, because if you knock down, like they're planning to, 85 acres of this forest, it can contribute to soil erosion, which means there's going to be more flooding. If you take down these trees, then you're going to be limiting the amount of air pollution that can be dealt with, as these trees are beautiful natural carbon captures. They produce oxygen. And these trees are absolutely essential to keeping those neighborhoods, as well as the city of Atlanta, cool and pleasant to be in. So this is a beautiful forest that was originally deeded for the recreational use of the people that live in the unincorporated DeKalb County that surround it. And those are primarily Black working class neighborhoods. It was supposed to be kept for their use, for their enjoyment, for their recreation. And instead, 85 acres is going to be raised to build this complex. Now, they've scaled back the complex a little bit. The Atlanta Public Safety Foundation originally planned to have this complex have demolitions, but now they're only going to have firing ranges. They're not going to do the demolitions anymore. We're just going to shoot things. They're going to have a nightclub. They're going to have an apartment building. They're going to have mock city streets. So it does seem, I think the residents have a genuine concern as to what type of training they're going to be receiving there.
And, when we visited the neighborhoods surrounding it, you would see, housing that was just, in disrepair. And also in Atlanta, we would see $750,000 condos rising, but an extreme shortage of affordable housing. So they're building apartments, they're building, a mock village, but they're not building affordable housing for people in the city or helping people to repair the housing that they have. I think that's a perfect, sort of analogy or metaphor for what this is really about.
And to resonate your point, when the whole design of the police is supposed to be to make the community safer, and should be a cohesion between the two. But in this regard, we see that one, you're taking it's ecological nightmares to start, one, and that means the quality of life in that community is going to get worse. But more importantly, when you have a depressed environment, then it's right for police brutality. Because you can justify coming into the neighborhoods and saying, oh, well, if crime is running amok. Yeah, you create such a depressed environment where people don't have no alternative, and it's not a justification for criminal behavior, but it's the reality of what you do to the poor and oppressed community. But going forward, okay, let's look at how did this come about? Because you, Tay, was talking about, and this is really the insanity part about this whole thing with Atlanta. Because we was talking about, when you look at Atlanta, okay, you look at Dr. King, you look at the Civil Rights Movement, you look at everything that went on in Atlanta to get Atlanta to become what they call a black Mecca, right? But more like a black mistake, all right? And in reality, because you have the middle class, the liberal elitist middle class that's in Atlanta that control the most of the political machinery, they weighed in, they sided with this. So where are you? So how is the people being represented in this community?
Oh, well, something I noticed is that there seems to be a divide between the old guard of Black civil rights activists who eventually moved into positions of leadership in Atlanta and the new younger generation of activists. The old Black civil rights folks, the NAACP, other activists, other leaders in positions of power, they've remained notably silent or have actually co-signed onto this project, whereas the younger generation of activists are pushing back and asking their elders, why aren't they stepping forward? Why are they allowing this to happen? $90 million is going to be invested into this. And as Stephen rightly pointed out, there's a need for affordable housing. How were they able to raise $90 million? Well, I can tell you, Home Depot put their money in. Delta Airlines put their money in. Merrill Lynch put their money in. Inspire Brands, which is actually the parent company for Dunkin' Donuts. And I won't make a joke about cops and donuts, but these Coca-Cola, it's like a who's who of like corporate America. And I think it so clearly shows something that many people have discussed, which is that there is a line between what police do, that police are primarily protectors of private property
right.
and capital interests.
Mhm.
And I think this is so clear that money is being poured into a project to further the police's ability to protect private capital
right.
as opposed to genuinely public safety.
Well, you know, as we were talking about before, this is kind of the culmination of the neoliberal crisis that, you know, is started years ago. And one of the ideas of neoliberalism that I think is often misunderstood with regards to the police is the fact that neoliberalism is supposed to be the idea that it's disband government programs because the private market can solve the problems. But what it is in reality is that private capital asks government to actually ensure their profits.
That's right.
And that's what's different about it. Like in Baltimore here, we have developers who use the government to subsidize and ensure their profits. And so what happens when you do that is you have a tremendous imbalance of wealth and a tremendously destructive political economy. And the only way that you can keep that, and I think a lot, and sort of tap down on the uprising about the unfairness of it, is to use policing. And the best way to mythologize policing is to invest in things symbolically like Cop City, where you're saying, look what we're doing. We're building this beautiful. And I think partly it was interesting because people mentioned to us that this was so-called the Atlanta way, right?
Yes.
Where, you know, they kind of get together with the powers that be and the neoliberal, I don't know what to call them, tools, and they conjure this vision that somehow investing in public safety is going to somehow improve the underlying condition. Just isn't true. Neoliberalism has caused an historic income inequality, and building Cop City is not going to create safety. Building affordable housing might.
Right, and that's really what's going on.
And it's the mythology that continues. It continues to this day.
It continues because the reality is that if you give people jobs, if you give people housing, if you give people quality
without
education,
lead in it.
you give people without lead in it, you give people holistic food, you invest in people, then you don't need the police because people want to take care of themselves. But going back, looking at some of the things that's going on in Atlanta, and what really I found like just outrageous is we talking about a place where, you know, at one point in time the police was literally people so fearful of the police and terrorize them that they wouldn't even come out their houses at night because of Jim Crow and Jim Crow. And now we have a situation where you're actually, because of corporate America and corporate America lining your pockets, and corporate America investing in your campaign, and corporate America ensuring that you stay in this seat of so-called power to continue to do the bidding of capitalists, then now you turn a blind eye to the reality that you're encouraging a military industrial complex style police department to police your community, because they're not going to police the more affluent. They don't have to police the more affluent. They're going to be the barricade between the affluent community and the poor and oppressed community.
You know, I just, when you said that, that made me think of the reaction, because this is something that Atlanta residents pointed out to us. In 2020, when Rayshard Brooks was brutalized by the police, there was an uprising in Atlanta. And I think the people at the time, the politicians, the people in power, the corporations, Coca-Cola, Home Depot, Wells Fargo, all those folks who are funding this project, they got very scared. They very much wanted to protect their investment, their capital. And that's one of the reasons why they're turning to this public safety complex. And I think one of the things that people don't often mention is that in the area around Wilani Forest, that Black working class area, that's unincorporated DeKalb County. They have no representation on that city council that is voting for Cop City. So they literally have no other choice than to go out in the street and protest and to hold signs. They have no other way of expressing their voice. They are literally disenfranchised when it comes to this project.
And that was strategic, because they like you said, if they go in an area where it's not incorporated, right? Then they don't have to worry about the pretense of being like the politicians don't have to worry about the pretense of being concerned or coming forward and reading off the script. We gonna see about, we gonna investigate. They don't have to come up with that. They can just say like, well, hey, it's business as usual. But okay, let's talk about the indictment of the 60 people under RICO. Now this is probably the most ominous thing I've seen in terms of the utilization of the criminal justice system. And George Jackson said it's the institution that's the threat. And he was specifically talking about the criminal justice system. Where you take a act, RICO Act, and primarily responsible for where it's really a catch-all. We could get charged with RICO right now if we say the wrong thing.
Absolutely.
And somebody say, oh yeah, well they was talking about blowing up something. And we could get charged with RICO and be find ourselves in front of a federal grand jury trying to rationalize why our freedom of speech should be recognized. But how did this come about?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Taya was talking about, there was a tremendous fear in the neoliberal coalition that she discussed with corporations and police, especially because they actually mentioned Rashard Brooks, who was a man who was killed by police after falling asleep in a drive-through line in a restaurant. So I think there was tremendous fear after that, and they kind of got together, and they saw these groups, these grassroots groups rising up, like, what are we going to do about them? How are we going to completely, I think, destroy the ability to protest? Because this indictment is one of the most scary things, and I've been covering the criminal justice for 20 years, that I've ever read. This thing is insane. I mean, they do stuff like, say, they had letter writing campaigns. They argued the First Amendment. They gave people numbers to call when they were in jail. Things that are all supposed to be fundamentally protected, and they indicted people for it. They indicted people for it. And the preamble is like an introduction. I guess they have a little waxing philosophic on anarchism.
Oh my gosh, they had 3 pages describing anarchism. They talked about collectivism, mutual aid, sacrificing individual needs for the collective good. I'm reading this. I'm like, they're
really
making,
attractive to me,
they're making anarchism sound pretty great. But if it wasn't so tragic what they were doing, I would have to laugh. They talked about handing out flyers as part of the criminal conspiracy.
They talked about
making zines. The little a photocopy. You put a staple in the middle that you hand out. Maybe you give them out to 20 or 30 people. They're talking about zines as being part of being a conspiracy. And just to also add to this, they've also used domestic terrorism charges and weaponized it against the protesters. And one of the most tragic things about the use of the domestic terrorism charges is that originally the law changing the exact meaning of domestic terrorism charges was done in order to ensure that Dylan Roof, who massacred those people, would be able to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And at the time, an elected official went on record and said, you know what, broadening the definition of domestic terrorism may seem like a good thing right now, but this could be weaponized against activists. In particular, it could be weaponized against folks in the Black Lives Matter movement. And what do we see right now? It's being weaponized against activists. It's being weaponized against people who are using their freedom of speech and people who are involved in anti-racist and anti-police brutality movements.
I mean, this is fun. Instead of relying on a modicum of government structure, anarchy relies on human association instead of government to fulfill all human needs. I mean, what is that supposed to be an indictment of something?
What is that?
The community is going to rely upon itself to, have its own power. I mean, it's basically saying that the power only lies with us and not with you.
And to your point, when you're taking the weaponized, now you're weaponizing just civil disobedience. But more importantly, you weaponize and you saying that anybody that has a problem with an unpopular policy or procedure, depending on how anything other than saying nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you say anything, if this get by, if this get by, then this becomes the template for all social disobedience. And to go back to your point, Jan, mainly when we look at Black Lives Matter, when we look at any type of protest, I'm gonna give you a good example of how they could have used it in the kids at Sandy Hook. Cause remember when 300,000 kids came to Washington. Yeah. They said that because about the gun law.
Yes.
And it was 300 kids, juvenile. I mean, young kids.
Yes, they could have.
But they could have turned around and say, no, this is anarchy. This is indict them on the RICO for coming out talking about the NRA.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how.
And I mean,
serious it
you know,
is.
even more absurd, like we speak people from the Atlanta Bail Fund, who they also indicted for money laundering. The total amount at question is $6,000.
Just $6,000. It was absolutely absurd. And can I just add,
go ahead,
very, very specifically, this money laundering that they accused, and we spoke to Marlon Crouch of the Atlanta Bail Solidarity Foundation. So what they do is that if you are exercising your right to free speech, you're at a protest, and you get arrested, you can call them and they will help raise money to get you out.
And you write your number.
So what they criminalized, they put this in the charges that if you wrote their number on your arm so that you could call them later to be bailed out, that was considered part of a criminal conspiracy. And that $6,000 that Stephen mentioned, that money that was part of the money laundering, that was money that was for gas, flyers, printing media, yard signs. That's the money laundering they're talking about. I had never seen charges so trumped up in my life.
It's insane.
I'm gonna give you one. I'm gonna give you what the real money laundering is. The real money laundering is the fact that you spend all this money from the state's coffers to prosecute people on these bogus charges.
Yeah.
Because all the money that you spend, all this money. You know, I remember Susan McDougal when the Kenneth Stop when they hurt, and all that money he spent on keeping her locked up. The amount of money that was spent on that, they could have built houses for everybody in the goddamn country.
I mean,
so it's the same thing here. You spend all this money to justify this insanity that you call justice, and that you could spend the same money on better schools, safer communities, in the sense of providing more housing, which would create a safer environment, people more invested in it, jobs. You could spend this money on this, but instead you're going to spend some money on saying you're going to criminalize somebody for saying, somebody going to bail me out. I can't remember their number, so I'm going to write their number on my arm, or I'm going to have that number in my pocket. Wherever I had that number at, or if I hear somebody call, I would call this number right here. So or all y'all in the conspiracy because y'all conspiring to do what? To get out?
Exactly. The one thing we can say about this is that it must be what they have done, what the activists in Atlanta have done has put so much fear in the criminal justice system, in the neoliberal system, that they must feel like they have to squash it out to nothing. Because honestly, they have put a mirror on the ugliness of what Cop City really is, on the ugliness of the idea that underlines it. And we went down there. When we were down there, like, we actually saw quite tragically the aftermath of after police had like a military organization gone in and just thrown people out. But it was just like there was a campfire,
there were like tents. There was like a tree house. And it was you could tell that this was a place that like there were families had been there. That people were that people had been enjoying the space, and it had just been utterly destroyed. The only thing that was left was a memorial to Manitera La Tortuguita. That was left to them. But it was really quite sad.
But it was humble. Do you know what I mean? It was humble.
I already know, because like and as I'm sitting back thinking about it, right? Because what they did, or what they're doing, like you say, it's no longer about Cop City. And see, the narrative shifted. It's no longer about Cop City. It's about these anarchists, these saboteurs, these agent provocateurs that's coming down there to destroy the city. But man, you was talking about this earlier, Ted. When you look at the list of people that they indicted, it's like the who's who don't live around in Georgia. It's the who's who. Where you live at? I don't live in Georgia, and you know what? And this is a classic Southern tactic. And back in the civil rights era, this was a classic Southern tactic that they used. The outsiders coming down here to start trouble. The buses coming down here to start trouble. So this is they going back to that narrative, like, outsiders coming down here because the people of Atlanta don't have no problem with this, because it's for the people of Atlanta. So why would you have a problem? You're not going to be down here. Y'all mad because we're going to have a safe police place.
But you know what? I'm so glad you pointed that out, because that is exactly the narrative that was fed to the mainstream media, especially when the first charges came out of the domestic terrorism charges, which happened at the Wilani Forest Music Festival. There were 33 people charged. 31 of them were from outside of Georgia, and they highlighted every state. I think there was one that was actually from outside the United States. Every single state that they were from, and only 2 people from Georgia were actually charged with domestic terrorism. And I was thinking to myself, that's very purposeful, because the people I spoke with said there were plenty of Georgia residents there, and it was very much to create a narrative that these are outside agitators, that our people here in the community are fine with this, and these people are coming in and stirring our good folk up.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I got from
unfortunately,
that.
then the Constitution applies no matter what state you're in. Technically,
Right. And
I don't even know why that's an issue.
Something else that and problematic about this, because we recognize that when we had protests and Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, the war in Vietnam, when people protested, they came from all over the world to express solidarity with this issue. Now you scaring people off by saying if you come down to Georgia, you cross the state line, we're gonna find some draconian law to say you transporting ill thoughts to bring into Georgia to create a problem for the Georgian citizens. Therefore, we're gonna charge you up on the RICO, or we're gonna charge you with conspiracy, or we're gonna charge you with everything but a homicide.
Yeah, I really think that the idea here is to, really, it's not just about crushing dissent. It is affirming the idea that dissent is somehow more destabilizing than the economic system they've created, right? That, oh my God, the real threat is about 20 kids sitting around a campfire, not Delta Airlines and Coca-Cola destroying the environment, destroying the world we live in. That's not the threat. The threat is the kids that, created, little, like you said, tree houses and sat inside a forest. That's the real threat. And that's the whole point of this, is to somehow conjure this. It's like the last gasp of the neoliberal sort of violence that we see.
And I would just add to that, one of the things that I noticed in that incredibly lengthy indictment was how they kept on talking about solidarity and mutual aid as if it was some kind of evil. And like you were talking about, people from all over the world came to participate in our protests in this country during during a variety of civil rights movements. So why is it a crime to receive support, help, brotherhood, and aid from other people who, let's say, don't absolutely live in your city or aren't directly impacted by the crisis that's occurring in your community? Why is it a crime to receive support from others?
Because neoliberal capitalism is inherently divisive.
Right, and
any community that erupts as an abeyance to it becomes a threat.
And that's really the threat, because if this was existed back during the times of the abolition of slavery, then all abolitionists would have been charged with the RICO.
You're so right.
If this was everyone in the Underground Railroad would have been charged with conspiracy to disrupt capitalism. And that's at the end of the day, that's what really, like you say, Jan, that's the problem. The problem is not the civil disobedience. The problem is the capitalism and fascism and oppression that creates an environment for the police to run amok, because they're the occupying force in the community.
What we see in Baltimore, the community was economically destabilized by deindustrialization, and what do they do but send in militarized policing to solve the problem? We could have, what's really strange about it for me as a person who's not necessarily capitalist, capitalists are supposed to be more efficient with money. Well, if we just invested in the community, we wouldn't need all these damn police. And I think that's what they're trying to say in Cop City, is like, if you take that $90 million and put it into us, we will show you what we can do as a community.
And remember that was one. And remember in this conversation about the police and getting them out of the community and getting them away from us, was to invest in the community in the form of like bringing social workers in, bringing mental health agency, to bring people into the community to help the community get stronger, as opposed to bringing the police and the limited amount of police that you have. But now they just shifted the narrative. It's not even about the police no more. Now and unless we can get back on the subject matter of what's really going on down there, it's gonna be about these 60 people.
Yeah.
You know, something that I think we really found in having this conversation is that it's highlighted what a threat our solidarity is, what a threat that is to our government. And that's actually really shameful that human beings coming together in mutual aid and support of each other is considered a threat. And something that we tried to point out to people when we did our reporting on Cop City is you may think this is a problem in Atlanta and in Georgia. You think this isn't going to be a problem for you?
Yeah.
Well, we know for a fact, because this is part of their advertisement materials for the training facility, that 40%, roughly 40% of the police officers that are going to be trained at Cop City are going to be from outside of Georgia. They're planning on training police officers and sheriffs from all around the country.
They can do that, but they can't. But people can't come down there in solidarity. And Angela Davis made that observation in her book. If they come in the morning, said they come for me in the morning, they'll come for you in the night.
Absolutely.
But as we close out, right? How do people get access to the indictment?
Okay.
And how do they get access to some more information on cops?
Just Google Georgia Bureau of Investigation and press release or indictment, or the Georgia State's Attorney General website has it posted a link to it. I don't usually tell people to read indictments. And, there's this idea of a speaking indictment versus just a very basic indictment. Well, this is like some sort of like, this is a blueprint indictment where it's like, this is a blueprint to suppress all human dissent. It's anti-humanist, in its essence, because, if we can't have solidarity amongst ourselves, if we can't have community, coalesce around an idea that we don't like, then it's game over.
Yeah, it's game over. This is 1983 in its rawest form.
Yeah.
And you know what? This isn't just. Stephen made an excellent suggestion for everyone to read this indictment because it is a blueprint. Also, Cop City itself is a blueprint because we're looking in our city, Baltimore, right now at our own Cop City being built at a historic Black university at Compton State. We're looking at possibly a $330 million police training center being built in my city. So if you think Cop City can't come to you.
And as we close on this note, that really sickens me because you're saying HBCU, and then you want and now we're going and the amount of money they kick back to them, that's automatically going like, oh, okay, well, we're going to look that way, as opposed to investing that money. You don't need to really look farther where to invest. You can ride up any street and see the abandonments in the city. And so if you want to stop on any block and say, well, I'm going to invest $100,000 in this block, or $200,000 in this block, $400,000 in this block, the whole city be revitalized, beautified, and you won't need the police because people be invested in the community. Thank y'all for joining me on this conversation.
Thank you for having us back.
Yeah, and I like having y'all back because it's important. One thing y'all on the ground, y'all all things about exposing police and corruption when it comes to that particular institution. And we need people really to recognize that, we're not talking about Cop City. We're not talking about Compton State, Cop City. We're talking about a system of fascism and oppression that breeds conditions for people to be subjugated and dehumanized. And then the response to that dehumanization, when they seek to self-determination, response is to build a Cop City, to militarize the police. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks,
and we continue to ask you to continue to support Rallying the Bars and the Real News. It's only on Rallying the Bars and the Real News that you get this cutting edge journalism, this cutting edge investigation from both Jan and Taya. They're always in the space, always exposing the injustice, always exposing those things that are problematic with this country. And it's only from the Rallying the Bars and the Real News that you'll get this kind of information. You're not going to get this type of information on main media. You're not going to get this type of information on major networks. You only going to get on Rallying the Bars. You only going to get on the Real News. Because guess what? We are really the news. Thank you.
Oh shoot. Oh shoot. I didn't switch my internet connection. We're on Starlink. This is going to be bad. Let's see if I can switch the connection without dropping the stream. Give me a minute. I'm going to... We still here? All right, we're still here. Awesome. Hey everybody, it's James Freeman. How's everybody doing today? We're going to watch something today that's going to probably piss you off like it pissed me off. Get ready for your blood to boil. Maybe we should smoke some weed before this one to stay chill. Can you believe, guys, that the government has made cannabis illegal? I think that cannabis is the one thing that mellows people out enough to keep them safe and to pacify people like me about their tyranny. Like, you watch a video like this and be like, dude, we need to go to Kentucky. We need to go to Kentucky. And then you're like, you know what? Let me just smoke a bowl real quick and think this over. You smoke a bowl and you're like, yeah, what good is it going to do? Man, let's just watch a movie. I'll tell you what, the dumbest thing, I think that's why they're starting to legalize marijuana now, is because they're starting to realize, dude, shit's getting real. People are really starting to notice. Good thing I was already smoking. People are really starting to notice how disgusting and horrible the things that we do are. And we need something to chill them out. They're like, legalize cannabis. Y'all need to, is it legalized in Kentucky yet? Because after this video, so I have not watched this entire thing yet. I've only watched about a minute or so of the actual arrest. I'm going to forewarn you that the video quality on this is absolute garbage because it was live streamed. But the audio stays steady through the whole thing, so you can still hear what's going on. There is static video of this. But from what, by the way, if anybody has For Public Safety's phone number, I did, but it was in my other phone that I smashed accidentally and broke. This is official misconduct and For Public Safety. If anybody has their number or contact information, can you ask them to reach out to me like ASAP? Like, I don't know if maybe they're even in the chat at the moment, possibly. But if anybody's got their information, can you reach out to them? Let them know that I'm live. I would love to get get him on the phone to either confirm or deny some stuff about this for me. I did just call the sheriff as well. I had a brief discussion with him. He told me, well, you haven't even seen the whole video. And I told him, because I told him, look, he said, did you see the video? I said, no, I didn't watch the whole thing. I only watched the 30 seconds to a minute where your deputies illegally attacked him. And I believe it was himself that did it, I think. But again, I'll go over this with you guys. I will learn the facts and information along with you. So some of you probably already have more information about this than I do. They made flowers illegal. They got people so dumbed down they made flowers illegal. Boyd Builder says, it's insane. I talked to the sheriff, total douchebag. Yeah, he told me that he stayed on the phone with me longer than anybody else because everybody else just cussed him out. And I told him that it is my hope and prayer that people start realizing their right to self-defense. I told them that's what I hope and pray. Because I told them I don't think you're ever going to stop doing what you do until people start defending themselves. And I don't know how many videos people have to see and how many court cases people have to see where things like this go to court, and I don't think that they'll win in Meade County in court on this. I think they'll be convicted. I think it'll have to go to an appellate court. We're talking about a lot of money to buy justice here. And I'm dead serious. I'm not, this county is going to convict him. Therefore, he's going to need to have a ton of money to make it to the appellate court and possibly a Supreme Court and the statute itself, I believe, will have to be challenged on its constitutionality. And unless you've got a ton of money, which honestly, these guys aren't poor. But, let's watch the video. We're probably going to skip through a lot of it. The video, maybe the sheriff wants us to watch every second to make sure that we're not missing context. But I think that's kind of bullshit.
Hey guys.
We're going to put it at 1.5 times speed. And anybody in here... What's up, Liberty Blair?
Oh, wow.
Anybody in here who has their contact information, will you please tell him to reach out to me? His phone number was saved in my other phone. So everybody who's just coming in, if you have for public safety's contact information, will you let him know that I'm trying to get I would like him to get a hold of me because his number's in my broken phone. Although they took his phone, I believe, so he may not have my phone number either.
Alright, get you guys back over here.
So this is the channel. Oh my God, what is her channel again? Official Misconduct. Spelled M-I-S-S. Misconduct. So they're coming into a public building, blah, blah, blah. We're already in 1.5 times speed. Maybe we'll go 2 times. Oh, we're in normal. You can see he's wearing a GoPro and he's static recording with his phone. So there is quality footage of this somewhere.
All right, got a bunch of business to do with you. I am Chris Ryder. I've called here several times, and I have court tomorrow, and they're trying to use records from here, from 1999 case. That was me here in 1999, in which I went to jail here. So I've gotten some of those records, some of your all's records, and we need to A, do some comparing, what I've got to what you got, and B, I've got a lot of questions about what's here. So I might be a few minutes, and I don't mean to give me any trouble, but I got to do this.
Okay.
So can you pull my original file that you have, so that we can compare what I have to what you have? 99, and then it's Christopher Ryder, R-E-I-T-E-R.
This guy couldn't be more professional.
No address or anything.
He's got business to do.
Just done that way, and then pan it up just a little bit or something, or just keep going down. Keep going office.
Oh, that's down. Sorry guys, I'm learning
Yeah,
how to
also
do
put
it.
this.
Good footage to Boyd
So the
Builders.
guys is saying that I bonded out the day of the arrest. That did not happen. According to this, it's saying that I bonded out the day of the arrest. That did not happen.
I'm still learning how to.
And this is a case history. That's what that is. It's a case history on this case.
Right.
So it's like a summary. This paper is a summary.
Right.
This is what you would see if you pulled up the record online.
If you
So,
could, like you're supposed to be able to.
All right. Yes, it's very old file. So what we're looking at there, one of the things is going to be this case summary. What does your case summary show? Or do you have one?
Hey everybody. Yes, Odin. I'm learning how to work it actually. Gotten a lot better than my first attempt. I need to get you. Oh, I didn't realize there was someone else behind me. So sorry.
I see it, yeah, fine.
All right.
Don Molly. I have one that's due next year in February, but I have one that's due tomorrow.
Why don't you stand outside while it's talking
Yeah.
to you?
If I other than mine, just
Okay.
for a reason.
We're going to take over the houses here.
Okay. Oh my goodness. All right. So, hello everybody. I'm getting sideways glances and stares.
We'll go 2 times speed.
Hey everybody.
Stop raining.
So Odin got us gimbals, and I'm still trying to learn how to work mine. Okay, this thing's been rolling on me again. Oh really? So the accuracy and pace that was dropped because of the font that was used. There we go. That's gonna work. That's a good thing that I need to look into. Thank you guys for joining us. I'll get back in there.
Oh, now zoom in.
Okay, how polite
There
of
it
them.
goes.
They exited the area for this other man to conduct his business. How polite of them. And do you have to do that? Do you have to do that? No, you can record in a public place and they have to go and create their own privacy, but can you be a decent person? And when somebody else is conducting business in which their private information might be relayed back and forth, yeah, you can walk out and be a decent person. Look at that. These people are so decent. These people. What do you mean by these people? Public safety and official misconduct. Could they have stood in there and made a big deal out of it's my right to be in here? Yes, absolutely. But they didn't.
They don't have it.
They decided to be reasonable.
Okay, this is so weird.
So it looks like 4 public safety stayed in there, but he's static recording. He's not live streaming. And with a static recording, you can edit things out later. So when people, this is how I always did things when I was out recording. When I was live, I would step back from scenes quite often because once it's broadcast live, that's it. You can't undo it. But when I was just static recording, no, I'm not going to walk away. If something happens that, you know, somebody's personal information or whatever that needs to be blurred out or edited out, then by all means, I can do it later. But I can't go back and record something after I've decided not to record. I can't go back in time.
Sorry we're missing everything. I was hoping that would be done. We're just going to nose it around.
As you can see, the quality is garbage, but that's... I don't think that that's necessarily too relevant to the story. We'll keep fast forwarding. She's still waiting outside.
You have to tell them the life and share of
Looks like. At this moment, she is now a goddamn queen. This female officer was about trying to put her hands on her, and I guarantee she was probably looking her right in the eye when she said, "Don't you touch me. Don't you touch me." I think this chick was ready to defend herself to the death and whoop the shit out of any dumb bitch that was going to put her hands on her illegally and unlawfully. And look, it worked. This woman, this female cop right here realized, holy shit, this one's real. If I put my hands on her, I might end my career today. My career might be over. I may end up with a medical discharge. And I don't see any other way to defend you. If you think you get to defend your rights in court, again, I said it yesterday, I'll say it again, how many times do you think the founding fathers took arrests so that they could fight in court? Never. You don't defend your rights in court. You defend your rights when somebody illegally and unlawfully puts their goddamn hands on you and attacks you, and you defend yourself against them. I'm not saying anybody should do it, but I'm saying this chick got balls.
Don't you touch me. If you touch me, you're going to be in a pickle. Do not touch me. I wouldn't laugh. Don't touch me.
I'll tell you what, if I were standing there right now I regret saying the things I said about her, because should we ever meet in person, I wouldn't doubt she'll whoop the shit out of me too. But if I were there and she told me that, I'd step back too. Like, I ain't shaming this female police officer. Well done. Because I would step back too. I ain't messing with her. I think she's serious.
You just messed up.
You
Do I
wanna go
want to
too?
go? I would not do that if I were you.
But of course, the man goes ahead and you know, he's like, well, I can overpower you. And that's what the Second Amendment is for. Because the Second Amendment is what puts the 80-year-old woman on the same level playing field as a 25-year-old UFC fighter. The Second Amendment is what puts an 80-year-old woman on the same level playing field as a 25-year-old UFC fighter. That's what it's for. Crafty Mama says, don't put all women the same. Amy Vet says, the lady... Army Vet says, the ladies speak. Thanks, Crafty Mama. Hey, don't get me wrong. I see this chick do some awesome stuff like just now. But, and you know what? It was true. It's not always women who do this. I see this all the time when people go out with multiple auditors. You see it with men, you see it with women, you see it with women like News Now Patrick. I used to go out with News Now Patrick all the time. And Bobby Hill, News Now Patrick, would never, ever, ever stop talking over me.